He's like, that's actually disgusting that you're doing it this time. But if it makes you feel better than last time, I support it. Look, I still don't know that I think I'm not like, yeah, I'm going to eat my placenta. This is so delicious. Like it's still kind of gross, but when I'm learning about the benefits, or honestly, when I'm talking to people that have done it, either for the first time or for their second pregnancy that didn't do it for the first, they're like, yeah.
I've told women, because I have had clients who deal with anxiety and deal with stress. And I'm like, hey, you don't have to take them all the time, but I would just encourage you to just have them just in case. And it's not to say like placenta encapsulation pills are going to like eliminate any sort of stress. Let's be clear about that. Like, these are not
magic pill. Yeah.
And those are not magic pills.
Hey guys, my name is Shayla. Welcome to the Hey Shayla Podcast. I went from full-time travel to full-time new COVID mom, and holy wow, is motherhood and adulting a learning curve. There are so many decisions we need to make and a million ways to do it right. I created this podcast to interview some of my gurus to share their knowledge and empower you on your journey. Let me be your guinea pig and ask the questions you think everyone else knows. Here, we're a little hippie. We try to do things as naturally as possible, and we don't take ourselves too seriously. But above all, we support one another and work to find what works. If you're into it, you're our people. Let's get started. Okay, thank you guys so much for coming back to the Hey Shayla podcast. Today, I have Chanel on the podcast. Chanel is a doula and a birth educator, and her goal is to empower and inform other mamas on what their bodies are capable of to help them feel confident and to have the healthy and happy pregnancy and birth experience that they desire and plan for. I'm going to start by prefacing for both of us. As I'm stumbling through that intro, I just got on the call with Chanel and I was like, so I just woke up from a nap. I just put Aaliyah down and you just got back from a birth.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is mom life. Your life. Just go with it.
I'm glad that we both made it, to be honest.
Yeah. So, you know, that's the win of the day. Just showing up.
Exactly. And I am due in 1 week or whenever this baby decides to come. And you are currently 26 weeks pregnant, 27.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Exciting.
Yes. We're also on the journey together.
Yeah.
So you're gonna enter it into it before I do. But yes. Yeah. I will be cheering you on.
Thanks. So everybody listening, this is two zombies talking on a podcast. Yes. I hope that you enjoy.
I hope it all makes sense and you can understand our language.
I mean, they probably speak the same language, so we're probably good.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so to start, I always like to hear from you. I want to know about you, how you know what you know, why you know what you know, how you got into it. So give me the lowdown on how you started and why you're doing this work.
This was all an accident. Okay. This will start off by saying this was an accident, but it was divine. I will say, I think it was very much aligned by God. Anybody who knows me knows that my faith is a huge part of why I believe the things that I believe, especially when it comes to birth. And so, on a high level, I have 2 kids at this point, and my pregnancies and birth experiences were very, very different. They were like complete opposites. My first birth was a hospital birth that was supposed to be natural, ended in an emergency C-section. I did not know much at the time. I thought I knew a lot of things because I was doing what I thought was research and Googling a lot of things and following the apps and the What to Expect book and talking to friends. And that was kind of what I based and then my hospital birth class. And that was kind of what I based my preparedness on. And then, but we didn't have support. And so that left us a little bit lost in the whole labor experience. And one thing led to another. Interventions were introduced. I did not know how to navigate any of that in that environment. And it ended in the emergency C-section, which was very traumatizing for me because I was thinking, okay, I'm this really healthy person. I'm very active. I should be able to have a natural birth like I want. It shouldn't be that difficult. And it was very difficult because I didn't know how to labor properly, and I did not know how to keep my mind in a place that was going to help me have that stamina. So when I got pregnant again for the second time, I said to myself, I need to do everything completely opposite of what I did before. I need to find the people who can support me, find the environment that can support the type of birth that I want, find the provider who can support the type of birth that I want, know how to have these conversations with my provider, hire a doula, and then find natural birth experts in this community of people who I can get encouragement and education from. And so I went the complete opposite route, which a lot of people, friends, family, thought I was crazy and thought that it was like the most dangerous thing in the world. But I learned a lot from that experience because I had to really protect my pregnancy and the type of birth that I wanted, because so many different people who were involved in my life just did not agree with my choices at that time. And they thought what I was doing was just really like trendy, and like very millennial. So that was the whole kind of premise behind even understanding and learning about the natural birth space. And when I had my VBAC at the birth center, it was extremely empowering and it was very redemptive for me. And I left that birth experience telling my husband I wanted to do it again, like, and anytime he was ready. And he was not. God made this third child happen because my husband was like, I think we're done. And I was like, no, I don't think so. And so, long story short, I left that experience like on a high, but then I also left my second birth experience extremely frustrated because I was like, why didn't I know this stuff the first time around? Like, where was this information? Where was this community of people? Why wasn't my provider sharing any of this information with me? And why did I have to go to a birth center essentially and meet all of these other natural birth advocates to know all of this stuff? And I just kind of took that frustration and started sharing like what worked for me, and that kind of evolved into what it is today. I decided that I wanted to attempt going through doula training because my doula provided such a foundational, powerful, empowering journey for me in that pregnancy, and I wanted to be able to do that for other people. I didn't know how it was going to work because I had a newborn and a toddler, but I was like, I'll just at least go through the training because it's virtual and see where it goes. And so I just continued to share. I started creating my own childbirth education course and just tried to start from that place because I'm a former teacher.
Oh, wow.
And so
perfect.
It worked out. I worked out. I like to teach. And so long story short, it has all kind of evolved. People were like, hey, I really want you to be my doula. Like, I love what you're talking about. And I'm like, are you sure? Because at the time I hadn't done any births. And so I was like, are you sure you want me to be your doula? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, but like, you might be my first birth. And they were like, yeah, it's fine. Like, I really just want you to like doula me. And I was like, okay. And then it just kind of fell into place and everything has grown since then. So
doula me.
I was like, sure, I will definitely do that, but keep your expectations like
but you had, I mean, you were self-conscious because it was your first one, but the knowledge that you had was the knowledge exactly that they wanted. So
it worked out. I'm very grateful, but it was, it all kind of stemmed from my frustrations at the fact that there were too many women who shared the same birth story as me, but from my traumatic one. I'm like, it doesn't have to be like that, and it shouldn't be like that. But we just are not given access a lot of times to those resources and that knowledge, and we don't know what we don't know until we need it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and it's hard too, because you're right. When it's your first birth, like, you just trust whoever you find that's going to help you. And everybody does have different preferences. So like, some people go through that and they're like, okay, cool, no problem. I had a scheduled C-section, or I wanted an epidural, or I wanted this. But if you want the natural route, you do kind of have to advocate for yourself and like create that team around you. I have like a chiropractor and a physical therapy, pelvic floor physical therapy, and a midwife and this. And my chiro was like, so did you just like build this team around you? And I was like, I guess I did. Like, I suppose that's what happened. Like, it's just crazy. But yeah, it can be hard to navigate because there's so many books and so many resources, and you really have to find somebody that aligns with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people all the time. I'm like, look, there's a ton of resources out there, to the point where like, I still would want somebody to get like a formal training from somebody, but there's just so many resources out there of so many different classes. But you, like you said, you have to go with who you're aligned with, because if you go and take 15 different childbirth education classes, it's going to leave you very overwhelmed, because people all have different philosophies about it. And so, and none of them are necessarily wrong. It's just that's their philosophy.
Yeah.
So who do you want to follow, and whose approach do you want to be led by? So I totally agree with that.
Who you align with. Yeah. I think that's a big part. So with all of that, that's so funny. I'm super, okay, wait, here we go. 5 thoughts are coming in and only one can come out. I don't remember. I can't remember now. I remember.
It's okay. This is mom and pregnancy brain.
Oh my gosh. Gosh. So I have been, last night, I was all over your YouTube. I was all over your Instagram and just soaking it up. Like, granted, I'm a week out, but anyone who's pregnant, like, your content is so good and it just answers like the questions exactly. And I'm watching it all, just being like, well, I had to stop watching it because I had to go to bed. I was like, okay, close the computer. Yes, you want to watch those 3 videos that she has on her YouTube channel, but like, you need to go to bed. They're so good. So I would highly recommend. Tell me I should know this, but what is your YouTube channel?
It's The Working Mama.
Okay.
Yeah, all of it's the same. AWERK.
Yeah.
ING. And
it's Mama. The same on Instagram.
Yep, same on Instagram.
Yeah. Which makes things so easy. It's so wonderful.
It is. I'm glad I got that before somebody else did.
Yeah. So today we are going to talk specifically about encapsulating or consuming, I guess, the placenta. This is like what I originally reached out to. I was like, hey, I see that you do like all this natural stuff. Do you know anything, or do you want to talk about encapsulating the placenta? And you were like, yeah, I do. I was like, okay, perfect. So yeah, I started by watching your YouTube video on it, which was super informative, but I have my own questions for you about it. So let's just start with the very basics of what is the purpose of what is the placenta? What does it do in pregnancy? And we'll get to what it can do postpartum.
Yeah. So the really amazing thing about the placenta is that it is a temporary organ. So the only time you're ever going to have a placenta is when you're pregnant and growing a child. And then when you don't have a child, it's gone, because when you deliver your placenta after you have your baby, and if you get pregnant again, your body will form the placenta from scratch. It's really amazing, actually. And there's a lot of like research and documentaries about the placenta, and I won't go into all of that. But
really, like what's one of them? Okay.
Email
it to me and I'll put it in show notes.
Email it to you.
Yeah.
The way my brain is set up right now, I can't think about anything. But and I was listening to a podcast about it, and they were the ones that referred the documentary. So I'll have to go back and find the name of it.
Okay.
But the purpose of the placenta is basically like your baby's or your growing baby's lifeline and life source. Essentially, how they get their nutrients, their vitamins, their iron, their blood oxygen, their blood volume, their oxygen, all of that comes through the placenta and the umbilical cord. And so that is basically their source when they are being formed in your womb. What was the next question?
That was it. Just like what it does. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So not only are we forming a placenta, we're also forming a baby. We like create it. So then once the baby is born, and I remember this kind of being surprising because everyone's like, oh yeah, your baby, you're going to give birth to your baby, blah, blah, blah. But then your baby's born. And if you're waiting for like a delayed cord clamping, you're still connected to the cords. You've got your baby on your belly or your chest, the cord's still connected. And then you have to deliver the placenta.
Yeah.
There's like still something that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also watched that video of yours.
Good. I'm glad you know. Yeah, that's the third stage of labor. Yeah. So you do deliver the placenta. Depending on where you're giving birth or what your preferences are, sometimes you'll cut the cord before you deliver the placenta. Most out of hospital birth experiences, you're going to deliver the placenta and then cut the cord, depending on, how long you want it to be delayed. A lot of people who are desiring a natural birth will probably do a minimum of 5 minutes, and your placenta will be delivered between 5 and 30 minutes, ideally. So just kind of depends on your provider. I know more hospital birth experiences, they may have more routine procedures of cutting the cord and then delivering the placenta. The good thing is, I don't want people to get freaked out like, oh my God, I have to deliver like 2 things.
Yeah.
The placenta is like one push or one cough, and then it comes out after it detaches from your uterine wall. The thing that sucks about that process is that when your provider starts to massage on your uterus, that is very uncomfortable, and it's not a massage. I don't know why we call it a massage.
Yeah.
It is an attack.
Yeah.
But like an attack on my uterus. But besides that, it's very simple. It's kind of slides right out. But the worst part about that is like the, quote unquote uterine massage that helps it detach from your uterine wall. And it is a large organ, which is why you can do it's a really powerful organ. So that's why you can do so many things with it. And then how it's also helped grow your baby for 9 months. So, I think that the more you can learn about that process, the less you'll be surprised by it when it happens.
Right. Well, I just remember because I labored in the tub. And then my midwife did not make it to my appointment. I did it in the hospital, but I found a hospital that I'm going back to. Like we moved, it's 25 minutes away. I'm like, we're going back there.
Yeah.
And my midwife this time was like, okay, but you're not going to labor at home for 5 hours. Like it's your second birth. You want to make sure you come a little sooner. And I'm like, okay, cool. And she's like, especially if you want to get in the tub, we want to get you here and going because they typically go a little faster. All right. So the first time she wasn't there and they were like, you need to get out of the tub so that we can deliver your baby. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I cannot get out of this. I'm like about to push this baby. I'm telling you, I have to push. So like, okay, get out of the tub. I'm like, oh, so they had to literally like really help me out of the tub because I was not having that.
That was the same thing this morning, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's such a horrible, I've said this on the podcast before, but the way that I described it is like, this is such a, just out there example for motherhood, but like in college, when your friend is super, super drunk in the car and you're like, okay, get up. You just have to go in the house. And they're like, no.
That's such a good analogy.
Exactly.
I am going to use that.
Oh my gosh. And I was
that's such a good analogy.
So this time I was like, hey, midwife, if you're there, can I birth in the tub? And she was like, yeah, you have to sign this waiver and then you have to read all the risks of doing it in the tub. And she's like, this is irrelevant too, but the tub that I'm going to be in is like a jacuzzi and not like a birthing tub. So she's like, the other hospital that I used to work at had like feet places that you could kind of bear down. This one's just a big oval. So you might not want to. And I was like, cool. If I don't want to, I'll get out, but I want the option to stay in the freaking tub. So then she said, okay, also you can birth your baby in the tub, but not the placenta. So I'm going to have to get out of the tub after the baby's born to birth the placenta. I'm like, okay, that's going to be weird. Like,
Yeah.
so there's that. But then I don't even remember if we did the delayed cord clamping. And I feel like would you say the most important part is that it stops pulsing, regardless of if it's before or after?
Yeah.
Comes out?
Some women's placentas, like everything will still continue to pulsate at 20 minutes. Some women's are done at 4 minutes, so
Interesting.
the if you want to maximize the amount of nutrients and iron and all of the other benefits that come from the placenta for your baby, if you can wait until it stops pulsating, the cord turns white, that's ideal.
Yeah.
But if you can't,
Right.
the
The
I would say the
longer,
minimum would be 3 to 5 minutes would be like a minimum.
3 to 5 minutes. And I've seen documentaries where people carry around the placenta until it falls off of the baby.
Lotus birth. Yeah.
That's
I'm learning about those as well right now.
really?
I am. I have thought about it. I'm like, should I do that this time? But it's a real big responsibility to carry around the placenta and the baby. So I'm still deciding.
But then can you consume it after that?
I believe so. Well, that's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that because I'm still learning about lotus birth. I don't know because I know one of the aspects of lotus birth is you're like covering it with salt to kind of preserve it over the course of the time until it naturally detaches from the baby.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can actually encapsulate it. That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that.
Interesting. If you do decide to encapsulate your placenta, which I did not the first time, similar to you were like, it sounds kind of nasty. Like, what do you mean eating an organ that you create and whatever? But then you go through your first pregnancy, postpartum, and you're like, oh my God, if anything will help me. And that's where Seth, my partner, is. He's like, that's actually disgusting that you're doing it this time. But if it makes you feel better than last time, I support it. And I was like,
anything to help you be better in the postpartum.
Yeah.
So than anything after they see what the real side effects could be. Want this? Let's go for it.
He's like, I don't have to consume it. So if you're gonna do it, it's gonna help you. Yeah, sure. I support it. I'm like, look, I still don't know that I think I'm not like, I'm gonna eat my placenta. This is so delicious. Like, it's still kind of gross, but when I'm learning about the benefits, or honestly, when I'm talking to people that have done it, either for the first time or for their second pregnancy that didn't do it for the first, they're like, yeah. So let's dive in. What are the benefits and why would somebody want to consume their placenta?
You want to do that? I think it's good. No. So the benefit, there's a lot of benefits. First and foremost, we are going to go through this hormonal dip because our body has been producing these extremely high levels of hormones to grow and house a baby and nourish and grow and all the things a baby. And then once your baby is gone out of your body has no need to produce that level of hormone anymore. So then there's a very significant dip. And when there's hormonal imbalances, that's where our moods and postpartum mood disorders and postpartum baby blues and postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression, that's where that stuff can kind of start. Not necessarily intentionally that we've done anything wrong, but just simply like naturally when we have imbalances, there's going to be side effects from that. So the one thing that's really beneficial about placenta encapsulation is that all of those hormones that are still within your placenta, you get to consume those, which helps you balance off some of that dip that you're going to be experiencing over time so that you're not feeling it so heavily. And you're still essentially getting some of those hormones and your baby's getting some of those hormones and it doesn't feel like such a drastic change. So that's the first main benefit. The other thing is that there is an increased production of oxytocin. So oxytocin is necessary to create a baby. It's also necessary to deliver a baby, and it's also necessary for breastfeeding. So, and to also help heal and recover, because oxytocin is the love hormone. And so we want that to kind of help labor progress, but we also want that in the postpartum to kind of help our moods, to help with breastfeeding, help with bonding and all the things. And so the placenta actually contains high levels of oxytocin. So consuming that is also beneficial. You're going to have oxytocin naturally from being skin to skin with baby, from breastfeeding. But sometimes, of course, like we were just talking about, we could just be moody, or we could be sad, or we could just be off for some reason. And having that supplementation, if you will, of natural oxytocin can be very, very beneficial. The other thing is like iron levels and stress hormones and milk supply. Like there's a lot of other benefits that come along with encapsulating or consuming your placenta, however you do that, whether it's encapsulation or other forms. But again, it's going to help you kind of navigate some of those big emotions, big drastic emotional changes, big hormonal changes. And then because the placenta is so high in iron, that also, which is why it's also important to delay the cord clamping as long as possible, because your baby will get all of that iron, and we want the baby to get all that iron. We want to get all that iron because in the postpartum period, we can also become anemic. If we weren't anemic before, you've lost blood when you delivered your baby. And so you could go and just take iron supplements or increase the amount of iron that you're eating in your foods, but you can also get this just through your own placenta.
Which they recommend. They recommend high iron foods postpartum.
Exactly. So those are some other things, but it just naturally contains iron that your body has actually created. So why not consume that? I mean, it was already in your body anyways, but I get that some people think it's really disgusting. I mean, but it's probably the most natural supplement you'll ever take. So, I mean,
wild.
It wasn't made in somebody's factory.
Right. Going back to oxytocin, I'm going to just kind of go on a little tangent because this was so interesting in your video, talking about how when you deliver, a lot of times they will give you like a quick hit of Pitocin to help stop the bleeding and to help the contractions to get the placenta out. And you said that if you can do the immediate breastfeeding, you can get like the natural oxytocin that happens when you breastfeed, which is what Pitocin is trying to replicate. So if you can try and breastfeed right away, that can help the whole process of like stopping the bleeding, getting the placenta out, getting all of that going. So I just had a trigger quick. I thought that was so interesting. And so, because you don't think when your baby's born, you're not like, oh, great, let's try breastfeeding. But like, that's exactly what you need to do.
Yeah. And the thing about it is that's also why immediate skin to skin is important, because skin to skin also produces oxytocin, because the reality is we're not going to probably breastfeed for the first time within the amount of time that your placenta is getting delivered, right? Like most of us don't latch within the first 30 minutes or the first 15 minutes because your placenta is probably going to be delivered within the first 15 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So most of us are not, especially the first time, are not latching that quickly.
Okay.
That does help, right? When it comes to still helping your uterus shrink and contract to get down to its pre-pregnancy size. But the biggest thing that helps in the immediate is the skin to skin. That's where the major boost of oxytocin levels comes from, because that skin to skin and that high that you just got and all those endorphins that are like going crazy right now because you've just delivered and met your baby.
Yeah.
That's what helps your uterus contract, clamp down, helps your placenta detach, and then become, then deliver.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think we can rely too heavily on Pitocin to do that for us. There is a time and a place for Pitocin for hemorrhaging and things like that, but I think it's important for us to be educated on that so that we don't feel like that has to happen in order for us to, like you were saying, have the oxytocin or allow our bodies to naturally deliver the placentas.
Yeah.
Like it can.
Right. And that's
in those cases.
Yeah. I just did a video on like questions to ask your provider so that you're aligned with your provider.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, even though I had this random OB deliver my baby, because I was in the hospital that I was in, I still felt comfortable with them. And I didn't feel like I was like fighting them. So I'm between pushes going, I want delayed cord clamping. Don't give me an episiotomy. And she's like, got it. That's all standard here. Don't worry. And then post baby coming out, she was like, hey, Shayla, you're still kind of bleeding a lot. Do you mind if I give you some Pitocin? And I was like, oh, thank you for asking.
Great. Yeah. What a great way of
Sure.
explaining that.
If
Yeah.
you think I need, if you think so. So then she, a little bit later, she's like, okay, I'm going to stop it. Your bleeding is stopped. You've used a half a bag. Normally we do 2. So but you're good to go. So we're going to stop it. And I was like, well, thank you so much. So it's right. And it was just so nice to have somebody that I felt like was supporting me and listening to me, and that I was working with instead of against. So yeah, I definitely think if you feel comfortable in the place and they're like, hey, Pitocin, and you're like, okay, yeah, sure. You're the doctor.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, okay. So back to the meat and potatoes. So the placenta basically houses all of those hormones, because that is what happens postpartum. You have this gnarly drop off of hormones, and you're just, it too. Like you can feel it. You're like, I'm kind of crazy right now.
Yeah.
And my husband or my partner is being so kind, but I don't like the way that I feel. Sometimes some moms have that bliss and like amazing, but I just remember being like, what is happening? And like the things that I was upset about, they were valid. How I responded to those things was heightened and tearful and
absolutely
wild.
Yeah.
So I love that the hormones are kind of, it helps to regulate. And I'm working with a clinical nutritionist, and she was like, are you going to encapsulate your placenta? And I was like, what? Why do you think so? She's like, yeah, it's glandular support. Like we give humans glands from animals for those hormones or for those whatever, like it makes sense. So what are the different ways that you can consume it? Because some people, have you heard that sometimes they will cut a chunk of the placenta out immediately and stick it in your cheek for that immediate?
I have heard that, but I haven't done it. And I don't know anybody who has done it, but I have heard that people have done that before.
I feel like that would be rural, where you need the Pitocin, but you don't have it, and you need a quick hit of the hormone.
Yeah. I did have a client actually who, well, and I guess this kind of like leads into your question, but I don't know. I don't actually think that she did that, but she just kept her raw placenta and froze it, and she just cuts little pieces off like over time and adds them to smoothies and things like that, because that was the way that she wanted to consume her placenta. And I think she did, like she made like a placenta smoothie the same day she delivered, and she was like, she hasn't had any issues. So
wild.
I think everybody has to, obviously there's concerns about raw placenta and encapsulated placenta and all the things, but again, I feel like there's benefits and risks of everything that we do, but I don't know that the risks are so great as compared to some of the other things that we put in our bodies.
Yeah, right.
But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah. So. But the cheek thing is supposed to help with the postpartum bleeding.
I mean, yeah, because I mean, it's going to produce that same level of oxytocin that,
right.
I mean, maybe even higher, right? Because it's
so crazy.
So anyways.
Okay. So let's go into the different ways, like you were just starting to. So one way is to have your raw frozen placenta that you cut into little cubes, and throw them into your smoothie.
Looks like steak.
Oh my God.
But so I've known of people who have taken their raw placentas home to do that and to like freeze it and just add it to smoothies or make baked goods or whatever recipes are out there for things. Most of the time it's like smoothies.
Yeah.
But I know that there's probably other recipes out there that I'm just not even aware of at this point. I also have seen people take their own placenta home and encapsulate it. So there is a very step-by-step process on how to encapsulate your placenta, which is one way that you can consume your placenta, which is basically through the form of pill. So they will, whoever does it for you, or if you do it yourself, you would dehydrate it, and then it would go into some sort of powder form, and then you would put it in there's more steps than that, but
yeah,
that's the simple step-by-step process. So you can take it through the form of a pill, which is probably the most popular. You can also do a tincture, which is more of sort of a liquid
dropper,
yeah, that some people will take, because for one, those have longer benefits, if you will. Obviously, anything that you put into your body that's liquid form, like a liquid vitamin, always kind of goes into your bloodstream faster than a pill does. So a tincture is an option as well, and it has a longer shelf life. So some people go the tincture route, which I wouldn't say is as popular. It's not really as discussed, but later on, like in your postpartum journey, it can really help with stress and anxiety, hormonal shifts. When your cycle comes back, your capsules can obviously, your encapsulated placenta can do that as well. But I think there's going to be a shelf life that's shorter when it comes to your capsules than it does with your tincture. And then you can also do a salve. So that's like an external sort of like moisturizer, if you will, that you can put on your skin, and that can help with external ailments, so scrapes or burns or cuts or other things. So it's really cool, because all of the things that our body creates, like a placenta or breast milk, can be used in all of these different ways to like heal and cure or solve a lot of the issues that we have, just by using them and not getting rid of them. So yeah, those are like the three main ways that you can use or consume the placenta.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that about the tincture. Because a lot of people that I've talked to have said that they wish that they had saved some of their encapsulated placentas for like weaning.
Yes.
Or
yeah, and people can do both. I think that if you find somebody who can do both, like somebody who provides the service, I have seen that some, I think maybe one of my clients has done this, but they got both. So half of their placenta went to the encapsulated, they got the encapsulated, and the other half of it was a tincture. And then, other people will also do things with their placenta, like, they'll like make it like gold, or I don't even know the formal name for it, but then you can like wear it as a necklace, or you can like keep it as a keepsake. Yeah. So like, it's not the placenta, it's the umbilical cord, but obviously that all kind of gets sent together.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wild. I like even the breast milk jewelry and stuff. I
haven't done it either.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a huge interest in it, but then I talk to friends and they're like, oh my gosh, I worked so hard for this breast milk. I want a little keepsake on like a pendant or on my ring or whatever. I'm like, okay, yeah. I mean, I understand why people want to do it, but I have never wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But this is so, because the person that's doing my placenta has the tincture option. And I was like, no, I don't know. Because how long is the shelf life for encapsulated placenta?
I want to say mine might have been for like 6 months, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. I think maybe, but again, that wasn't even an option for me, because I knew I had to take him up till 3 months. I was like, I'm going to probably go through all of these, because the day I don't take them is going to be the day that I wish I did. So I think though, my expiration date was like somewhere between 6 months and a year. I could be completely wrong.
I'll have to ask my person.
Yeah, but obviously a tincture is going to last longer than that. I would assume it has a minimum of a year shelf life, or longer, because some of the benefits are talking about like your cycle or menopause, like weaning, and for that I'm still breastfeeding my daughter and she's 2,
Yeah.
so like I would love that right about now to help with the weaning process, because she's not interested in weaning. So we'll see this next time around. Maybe I'll go both.
Well, yeah,
both
now
ways.
I'm going to have to ask, because I was just like, I don't know, just do the encapsulation. That's fine. All right. Well, that's good. So I didn't even consider the tincture. So when now my mind is like racing, but so then I'm going to do these out of order. I think I have my questions out of order, but what was the process to get your placenta to your person? Because mine was like, tell me when you go into labor, bring a cooler to the hospital, which I don't have a cooler. Seth was like, it's not going in my Yeti. I'm like, okay, I don't blame you, but I need to figure out if the hospital can put it in a fridge or if I actually do need to bring this. And then she said she needs to come pick it up 2 hours after it's delivered.
Right. Yeah, that's typically the process. In the hospitals, some of the hospitals that I have doulaed at, they will only allow your placenta, like if you're going to take it with you, they will only allow it to be on hospital grounds for 2 hours before it has to be gone. So it either needs to go to your house. I know it's crazy. Either needs to go to your house or somebody needs to come pick it up, because obviously mom's not leaving 2 hours after she gives birth. So like, somebody's got to come get it, or partner's got to take it somewhere.
Yeah.
So what the process that you explain is typically what I see for hospital births. So at least here in Dallas, let me just speak for Dallas. In Dallas, that would be the process. You would pay the person ahead of time. They would tell you, bring this cooler, the hospital can give you ice, have some sort of like Ziploc bag or something to put your placenta in, put it on the ice, call me when you deliver, and somebody will be there to pick it up within the first 2 to 3 hours of delivery. And then they will return it to you somewhere between, at least in my case, was like around 2 to 4 days postpartum. So that's one option. When I got mine encapsulated, I did it through my birth center. And so they had a partnership with somebody or a company or a group who encapsulated placentas. And they were a group of midwives who did them. But we would work through the birth center. And so if they knew we were encapsulating, they would actually take care of that whole process for us. So they would take care of the placenta, communicate with the people, they would come pick it up. And then we would, at our like 2 or 3 day postpartum appointment, we would get our pills at that point.
Yeah.
So that was the process. There are other, because I know finding somebody to encapsulate can be challenging based on where people live. There's a cool service, I guess now. She's in California, and she encapsulates placentas nationally. And so she actually sends you the cooler, and I've had some clients use her who are like in Kentucky and didn't have access to anybody in the area who could encapsulate. So the lady sends the cooler and all of the materials to basically ship the placenta to her on dry ice, and then she'll ship back the pills. So, the good thing about that is like you always could get it.
Right.
No matter where you're at.
Right. I never even considered like not having, I luckily just knew somebody and she's like, oh yeah, I do it. And I'm like, cool. But I'd never considered, I would imagine more rural areas in the US where like don't have that. So that's an awesome option. Do you know the name of that?
Yeah. I think it's Mommy Made it's Mommy Made Encapsulation. Yeah, that's what it is. Mommy Made Encapsulation.
Okay.
And hers are really pretty. Not that it matters technically, but she'll like send you like all of your placenta and like all of your pills are like different colors.
Oh, wow.
It's fun,
Yeah.
Not that it tastes any different, but it doesn't really taste like anything most of the time, but at least it looks pretty. It says that, and it says that they have them ready in 2 to 3 days.
Wow.
Once they have the placenta, it only takes them 2 to 3 days to do it. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay. So when we were talking about how the placenta holds, because I obviously am looking at both sides. I feel like it's really good to be educated on both sides of everything that you decide what to do.
Yeah.
So a lot of the arguments are, okay, so your placenta is the filter between your body and your baby. So it's going to, hold all the hormones and stuff, but it can also hold all the heavy metals that your baby doesn't need. Or like in my case, I had COVID, I don't know, second trimester. And so I've read that COVID placentas look a lot more aged.
They do.
So, okay. So I've been very direct with my person and I'm like, look, I want to do this, but if my placenta is looking rough and gnarly, like black spots, some people say, she's like, I'll cut that out. My midwife was like, I don't know if I would do it if you've had COVID. And the person who's doing the placenta, she's like, look, if I look at this and I do not think we should encapsulate, or I'm not going to do it. But I've done it with COVID placentas that look fine. So what do you say that? How do you, if it's holding all the good stuff, I imagine it's also holding some of the bad stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and that's definitely a risk. I mean, that's definitely a potential reality of it because like you said, it is a filter. So it doesn't just hold everything that's good, right? Nothing that we have in our body just holds what's good. We have natural bacteria in our bodies, which is why we have to get tested for some of these things in pregnancy to begin with, right? So that being said, I have not personally seen much research, right, that states that has been dangerous or harmful. Like even that being the reality, I have not seen any research. Of course, the research for placenta encapsulation in general is still just very small, right? So and this is the challenging part about natural things in general, is that there's not a lot of research because people aren't putting money behind those kinds of research studies, right? It just doesn't. So we might have a few, but the majority of the research that we have is very anecdotal and it's qualitative. So it's not, people don't always see it as real, reliable research. In my opinion, that we can't completely rule that out because those are real analytics and those are real data points that still need to be considered just because it's not in this huge, massive, expensive study. That being said, I believe that is absolutely a reality. However, I don't know if it's at a high enough level to where it would be truly harmful for our bodies more than it would be beneficial. I think that if we had more research on it, then we could have a little bit better idea of how harmful it could potentially be. But of the other people in other countries who do this all the time, I just can't personally imagine that it's that harmful to where it is more than some of the metals that we consume in other things. Because all of us are consuming something,
in fish or whatever.
That's what I was gonna say, in fish and other things. So zinc, right? Like zinc is still a metal and we still take that. And so at the end of the day, I think you have to do what you feel like is personally best for you, what makes you feel most comfortable. There was also something you said that I wanted to.
Have you seen COVID placentas?
That's what it was. COVID placentas. Sorry. Yes, I have. So one of my clients had COVID in the third trimester, and she was also planning to encapsulate and did encapsulate her placenta. One of the things that a lot of the midwives, at least that I've worked closely with, have noticed is that COVID placentas look different than people who don't have COVID or who haven't had COVID in the past. Some of the COVID placentas are a lot more calcified. So like you were saying before, they look different, They look worn, they look older,
Is that
and
color
they
or
look
like
like
plump, or what makes
color,
them look old?
and but also like they just look like they look more used, if that makes sense. Like they look like they've gone through a lot. Like it's
Okay.
not just like, doesn't look as healthy of an organ as like a juicy bloody placenta does out
So
of
it's
a
like the
average one.
smoking lungs versus the
Exactly.
non-smoking
That's
lungs.
exactly what it is. So when her
Ah,
placenta was delivered, the midwife was showing us how, like you were saying, it's a little bit darker in some areas. It's a little bit bumpier in some areas. Like it's not a smoker's lung, but it looks like when you're comparing a healthy lung versus a smoker's lung, it does look similar to that, in my
oh my
opinion.
gosh.
That's
Yeah.
the placenta that I saw, at least. And so that being said, she still encapsulated her placenta. She still takes her, you know, pills and has no problem with them. I do think it's something to bring up to the
Yeah.
person, whoever you are having do your placenta, because the midwife who was showing us this mom's placenta was like, this area might not be as useful because it looks like it really hit it right here. And maybe that's an area where you're going to have to
Yeah.
cut it off and not use that part of it.
Yeah.
That's something that I would have a conversation with your placenta encapsulator about, because I had COVID, and well, I don't, and that's the thing, I guess we'll find out, because there's also limited research on that too.
Right.
But
Everything is true with COVID.
but we had COVID, and I found out I was pregnant at the end of our quarantine period. So it was like,
Oh,
I was like 4 weeks, 5 weeks. So it was still
yeah.
like super early on. But most of the women, that the midwives, at least that I have talked to, were saying that they see these placentas look like this for women who've had COVID in their second or third trimester, not necessarily like earlier on in their
Yeah.
pregnancy. So, we'll see. And I also have heard, again, this is all based on word of mouth, not based off of research at this point, but certain variants made certain placentas more damaged or more calcified than maybe some of the weaker, quote unquote, variants.
Right.
So I don't know if there's any real backing to that, but
Interesting.
maybe in their experience, they were like, the Delta variant, see, like people who had the Delta variant seem to have like this, but then the Omicron variant, like it didn't seem like those placentas took a hit as
Right.
much as the ones with the Delta variant. Now, again,
Right.
those who had what variant, I don't even know.
Yeah.
So I don't know how accurate that is either. But
Right.
I will say, like, I think maybe when we were only talking about the Delta variant, that was when they were seeing more of those experiences of the placenta.
And I think you're right. Yeah, depending on when you had COVID. And that's the hard part, even just not being pregnant. Like COVID is just such a new thing. People don't know. So you kind of have to do what you feel comfortable with. And again, trust the people you're working with, that they are going to tell you like, hey, I'm not going to take your money, or I'll take, you know what I mean? Like, it's not about money. It's about, this doesn't look like something that I want to do. The whole thing, some of it, whatever. And yeah. And I think that that's the same with independent of COVID. Now talking about like these natural choices that you're making, you're right. A lot of times there isn't research around them. And you just have to decide like, well, it makes sense to me to do delayed cord clamping, or to skip this, or just different things. And yeah, you just have to kind of go with what feels right to you. So yeah. But so along with that, if I've heard also that, have you ever had anybody take their placenta and be like, nah, I do not like the way that I feel on it?
I've heard of people that have had that experience, because the one of the major, not even major, because I don't know how common it is, but it is one potential side effect, is that instead of it increasing your milk supply, for some women it decreases their milk supply. So I have heard of some women saying, I felt like my milk supply dipped after this, or I didn't, feel like it was doing anything for me. So I stopped taking them.
Yeah.
So I have had friends and like women who I know who have said like, I have them, but I didn't really feel like they were doing much for me or like benefiting me in some of the ways that I thought it was going to. I still have them if I decide to change my mind later, but it just didn't, it didn't change maybe what they were thinking
expecting
for them.
Right. And I also think if you don't have the experience, like to compare it to.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cause if I was just feeling normal, I'd be like, I don't know. No, it doesn't really do anything. But having that first experience.
Oh yeah. You're like, that was rough.
It's so wild.
It's real wild. And I've told women, because I have had clients who deal with anxiety and deal with stress. And I'm like, hey, you don't have to take them all the time, but I would just encourage you to just have them just in case. And they were like, no, I don't really think so. Like there's these other natural supplements that help with stress and anxiety and things. And those are all fair. Right.
Yeah.
But that group of moms still dealt with, and it's not to say like placenta encapsulation pills are going to like eliminate any sort of stress. Let's be clear about that. Like,
they're magic pill. Yeah.
And those are not magic pills. I wish they were. If you can make the investment, it's worth having just in case, in my opinion. Like it doesn't hurt anything.
We got a tour of our placenta. They like showed us all the things. Yeah, it was pretty wild.
It's pretty cool, right?
It is very cool. Is there any reason or anybody other than potentially like a really aged placenta that you're like, okay, if you have this, and this, you probably shouldn't not encapsulate or consume?
Not that I've seen personally, but again, there may be stuff out there, but I haven't personally seen like major, don't take this if you deal with this.
Another obvious one was like, if you do drugs and you drink a lot of alcohol,
right?
Don't encapsulate your placenta.
For sure. Yes. I guess that's something that has to be said out loud.
Awesome. Thank you for talking to me about all these things. This is what I needed. I'm now going to ask my placenta encapsulator about tinctures because that sounds great to have that. Because like you said, if the I'll have to ask about expiration too. Yeah. I'm glad we talked about this before, so I still have time.
I know you have a week left to make a decision.
I know. This is my last thing I'm doing for work, this interview. Well, I'm glad that it worked out, that the birth didn't go too long, that you still had some energy to do it.
I was real nervous. I was like, I can't reschedule this.
It would have been fine. But now I'm a little nervous that I'm going to tell my body like, okay, cool. We're ready now. And tomorrow it'll be like, all right, go time.
Yeah. So you better call your encapsulator today when we get off of this call.
Okay. So let's go over again where people can find you if they want more information about what you have all the information on.
So you guys can follow me on Instagram or on YouTube at A Working Mama, AWERKINGMAMA. I post pretty much every day, try to provide as many helpful tips and tricks there. And then weekly on YouTube, I also have a full childbirth education and support program where you can work closely with me throughout your pregnancy and postpartum journey. So I can educate you and support you as a virtual doula for this whole process. So if that's something that you guys want more support on, if you don't have a doula already, I would love to be able to work with your family and kind of help you navigate some of these things and make decisions for yourself going into your birth.
And then how does it work virtually? Are you there like on the phone, on the video during labor and stuff?
If I am somebody's personal one-to-one doula, then yes. Like this morning, the birth that I supported she was in California.
Oh, okay.
And so whenever that person is ready for me to log on after they've labored as long as they can by themselves, or as we're entering into active labor, I'll log on to Zoom and then I will be there with them until they have their baby and a little bit after that. So this mom today I was on Zoom with him for 12 hours and it was great. I mean, you got to work through it. Birth takes a while. So that's what it would look like if I was somebody's one-to-one doula. But in the program, I would not necessarily be at that person's birth. I would be supporting them every single week before their birth, up to their birth, and then after their birth. And just making sure that they have all the tools and resources to navigate it with their partners or support people or whoever is going to be in the room with them.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And I feel like that mine was virtual because I was in the heart of COVID, and it was still so helpful. Like we got tips about counter pressure and different positions to go in. And it was fantastic.
Yeah. It's definitely great for people who either can't afford a doula, don't have access to a doula. Because I do think some in most hospitals, like you were saying, are still, even after the pandemic is kind of fizzled away and slowing down, they're still limiting number of visitors and stuff. So it's helpful to either be able to have a virtual doula who can be there with you or somebody who can prepare you. And I've had a lot of success with families who've gone through my program and literally just had the most amazing birth because they were like, yeah, we stayed at home and we got to the hospital and I was 9 centimeters and we were there for an hour and had our baby. It was great.
Oh my gosh.
But they knew how to do that because they were confident. They had like nothing to freak out about. Whereas, little me in the first pregnancy was like, oh, water broke, go to hospital immediately.
Yeah.
And then we saw how that ended. So,
yeah.
So anyways, it's just good to have the resources and support.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. I will also put your course and all of your links in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for chatting with us. And I would highly recommend people, your YouTube's about to explode. Like seriously, I was like watching all the videos and I was like, how many subscribers does she have? And I was like, what? This needs to be a huge channel. Like there's so much good information. So I can't wait for that to happen because it's going to.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah. I'll talk to you soon.
All
right. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, please share with somebody you think would love. And I would be so honored if you would subscribe to the podcast and leave a comment and rating below so I can know what you guys are digging, what you want more of, just connect with you a little better. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.